This message is brought to you by Alliance Bible Church located in Mequon, Wisconsin. Our vision is to captivate generations with the satisfying gospel of Jesus Christ. For more information about Alliance Bible Church or other resources, please check out our website, myabc.church.
The greener grass conspiracy is a thing. You know what the greener grass conspiracy is? If only I had that, then I could be content. Right? Back there, over there, up there, I could be happy, but not here. And of course, it is a conspiracy. It's a conspiracy. The greener grass conspiracy is a conspiracy. We jump after the next thing and we think is going to make us happy. And what happens? When we jump after that thing, we only end up stuck, right? Kind of like this. Yeah, we're free. Yay. Oh, whoops. Oh. Now, I want to draw your attention to the fact that the animal the Bible uses to describe us more than any other animal is what? What was that? Therein illustrates the problem, which is why our vision is what it is. Our vision is captivating generations with the satisfying gospel of Jesus Christ, because he is the only thing that isn't a ditch. He's the only thing that isn't a ditch. Only Jesus satisfies. Only Jesus satisfies. One of the biblical themes in this vision statement embraces the topic of rest. There's a lot of confusion out there, though, about this term rest, because the way in which we use it in everyday life is quite different than the way it's often used in the Bible. In the Bible, maybe the most familiar instance we know of with regard to rest is the creation account. God creates in 6 days and then rests on the seventh. What's going on with that? What's up with God resting? Well, God isn't resting because he's tired. And this is where confusion kicks in, because one of the primary ways we think about rest is that it's something you do when you're tired. The Bible makes it clear God doesn't get tired. He's not tired. He's not resting because he's tired. So why is he resting? Listen carefully. He's resting because everything is complete. It's a statement of completion. Everything is appropriately finished. There's simply nothing left to be done. As one author puts it, it's the rest of achievement, not inactivity. God perfected what he set out to do. It's a statement of completion. Everything is as it should be. The work is done. This is what it means to rest. It's to be able to take a step back, to be able to assess it all and say, yes, this is the way it's supposed to be. That's rest. Now, God isn't the only one who rests. Jesus has an incredible invitation. In Matthew 11, he says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Is this talking about Sunday afternoon naps? If you go to church in the morning, Jesus will give you rest in the afternoon? No. Rest is the contentment, the satisfaction, the peace, the okayness that your soul longs for. It's the longing we have to be able to stand back and say, yes, this is the way it's supposed to be. And to a degree, we can all have that right now. That's what Jesus' invitation is about. Now, why am I talking about rest? Well, because the text we're considering today contains two stories, both of which occurred on the Sabbath. Sabbath means rest. These two stories have rest as a central feature. We don't know how far apart these Sabbaths were. The events took place on different Sabbaths, but the fact that Luke takes two separate incidents on different Sabbaths and packs them together is telling us he wants to show us something about the Sabbath, or he wants to show us something about rest. Let me read it. Luke chapter 6. Luke chapter 6. One Sabbath, Jesus was going through the grain fields, and his disciples began to pick some heads of grain, rub them in their hands, and eat the kernels. Some of the Pharisees asked, "Why are you doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath?" Jesus answered them, "Have you never read what David did when he and his companions were hungry? He entered the house of God, and taking the consecrated bread, he ate what is lawful only for priests to eat. And he also gave some to his companions." Then Jesus said to them, "The Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath." On another Sabbath, he went into the synagogue and was teaching, and a man was there whose right hand was shriveled. The Pharisees and the teachers of the law were looking for a reason to accuse Jesus, so they watched him closely to see if he would heal on the Sabbath. But Jesus knew what they were thinking and said to the man with the shriveled hand, "Get up and stand in front of everyone." So he got up and stood there. Then Jesus said to them, "I ask you, which is lawful on the Sabbath, to do good or to do evil, to save life or destroy it?" He looked around at them all and then said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." He did so, and his hand was completely restored. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law were furious and began to discuss with one another what they might do to Jesus. We're going to look at three aspects to rest this morning: how to miss it, tastes of it, and how to get it in full. How to miss it, tastes of it, and how to get it in full. First, how to miss it. All right, so Jesus and the disciples are a bit peckish. They grab a few heads of grain, roll them in their hands, separating the kernel of wheat from the chaff, and then they eat. So what are the Pharisees so bugged about? Well, maybe they thought Jesus and the disciples were stealing. It's not their field. That's not it. The Old Testament law that governed Israel at this time made provision for the kind of thing they were doing. Snatching a few heads of grain at the edge of a wheat field is not a problem. It's not what they were doing that created the angst in the Pharisees. It's when they were doing it on the Sabbath. The Sabbath was a day of rest. You weren't to work on the Sabbath, but this raises a question. What constitutes work? Certainly in their minds, picking a few heads of grain, rolling them in their hands, and eating was considered work. Well, how do we know? Let me read to you from the Mishnah. I'm sure you read it every morning as part of your daily devotions. The Mishnah is a Jewish collection of oral teachings, traditions, and written works that were developed during the first couple of centuries AD. So it was hot on the front burner at the time of this story. Foundational document for Judaism. The Jews of Jesus' day didn't like the ambiguity of what constitutes work. So they developed a list that became known as 40 less 1. In other words, 39 examples of work that is prohibited on the Sabbath. I'm going to read it to you from the Mishnah. It says, the generative categories of acts of labor prohibited on the Sabbath are 40 less 1. He who sows, plows, reaps, binds sheaves, threshes, winnows, selects fit from unfit produce or crops, which means shopping's out, no more shopping, grinds, sifts, kneads, bakes. He who shears wool, washes it, beats it, dyes it, spins, weaves, makes 2 loops, weaves 2 threads, separates 2 threads, no sewing on the Sabbath. Sews 2 stitches, tears in order to sew 2 stitches. He who traps a deer, slaughters it and flays it, salts it, cures its hide, scrapes it, cuts it up. No hunting on the Sabbath. Erases 2 letters in order to write 2 letters. He who builds, tears down. He who puts out a fire, kindles a fire. He who hits with a hammer. He who transports an object from one domain to another. So helping your friend move is prohibited on the Sabbath. Lo, these are the 40 generative acts of labor less 1. Well, I suppose they saw Jesus and his disciples reaping heads of grain, threshing them in their hands, and threw the penalty flag on them. Unnecessary working on the Sabbath against Jesus and his chums, 15 yards, replay 4th down. And so Luke tells us about another Sabbath instance in which the Pharisees threw the flag. Jesus was in the synagogue teaching. There was a man there with a withered hand in attendance. And the text kind of makes it clear by this point Jesus was a marked man. The Pharisees were locked in on him waiting to see what he'll do, and he heals him. Now, what's the problem with that, you say? Enter the Mishnah, which forbade any healing on the Sabbath unless there was endangerment to life. The man with the withered hand had likely been dealing with that for years, so he didn't qualify. So they throw the flag again, and Jesus and the disciples are turned over on downs. Now we look at the Pharisees' reactions to these events, and we can be tempted to look down our noses at them and immediately conclude that, hey, we'll never be like that. But realize who they are. They are not atheists. They are not secularists. They are not wild childs. They aren't moral relativists. Who are they? They are religiously devout and morally scrupulous people. They're in church every Sunday morning and evening and Wednesday night. They tithe, they serve, they pray, they read the Bible, and they don't want Jesus in their lives. They want to kill him. So how in the world do religiously devout and morally scrupulous people get to the point of wanting to destroy Jesus? I ask you. What was Jesus doing that set them off? Well, ultimately, he was breaking, contradicting, devaluing what was most important to them. He was a threat to what they most cherished. See, for the Pharisees, following these rules was not an obsession with trifles. It's important to get this right. It was not an obsession with trifles. It was not hair splitting out of boredom. Following Sabbath rules, and circumcision, by the way, were the two elements that made the Jewish people unique in the world, visibly unique in the world. The 39 types of work prohibited by the Mishnah was an identity marker. It's what made a Jew, and Jesus was undermining their source of identity, value, and worth. In short, Jesus didn't value what the Pharisees valued to the degree they valued it. It's possible for you to be a faithful church attender and morally conscientious and not be on the same page as Jesus. And because of that, to very clearly miss out on the rest he offers. We can be so easily sidetracked by secondary matters that don't resonate with the heartbeat of Jesus, such that our obsession with those secondary matters cause us to miss who Jesus is and what matters most to him. And I know that this is conjecture, but it seems to me that an obsession with secondary matters turns us into miserable people. I can't imagine the Pharisees were the kind of people you'd want hanging out at man night. One pastor writes, "In some circles in my country, any faithful Christian parents will, it is implied, certainly place their child in overtly Christian schools or else carry on homeschooling, certainly not in state-supported public schools. Or there may be others who decry dating for Christian young people. Courting is the only way. There are some clergy types who tout their freedom and love their alcohol and cigars, but insist that there can be no celebration of Christmas or Easter in the churches they serve. Or you yourself may simply slip into a pattern of hyperkinetic Christian activity that you feel you have to do. A veritable treadmill of Bible studies and circle meetings and volunteering to help parachurch ministries and service projects. So nights and even days can be taken up in good Christian activities, and yet it is little more than an exercise in exhausting tyranny. And where is the freedom that Christ has given? Must I myself defy the bondage of a self-imposed tradition in order to walk in Jesus' freedom once more? What secondary matters are consuming you? It's quite possible to be a religiously devout, morally scrupulous, active church attender and not be on the same page as Jesus. It's quite possibly hyper-focused on matters Jesus would label secondary and thus miss completely the rest he offers. Let me put this a different way. If you're going to levy criticism in the direction of another follower of Christ, be good and sure Jesus would endorse your criticism. Be good and sure. The Pharisees wasted no time criticizing the behavior of the disciples, but they were surprised to find out Jesus didn't agree with their criticism. See, Jesus says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." There are people in every church who don't have the rest Jesus offers because they, like the Pharisees, have wandered from the things that matter most to Christ. They have taken secondary or tertiary issues, made them matters of first importance, and when other people don't also make those matters of first importance, they come down on them like the Pharisees did. And I can't help but think how miserable the life of a Pharisee must have been. This is how you miss it. Grow disproportionately consumed with secondary issues. You want to miss the rest Jesus offers? That's the ticket. Grow disproportionately consumed with matters of secondary importance. Second, tastes of rest. All right, so rather than nitpicking at each other, Jesus shows a better way. He uses the case of David and his gang eating the sacred showbread used in the temple as a precedent for having his disciples pick and eat on the Sabbath. And then he heals a man with a withered hand. Think about what is happening on these two Sabbaths. Back up, zoom out, what's happening? He's feeding the hungry and he's healing the injured. Why? Why is he feeding the hungry and healing the injured on the Sabbath? Not coincidence. Two are connected, they're tied. Why are these two things happening on the Sabbath? Because they are meant to be signposts and pointers to what the Sabbath is meant to celebrate. Feeding the hungry, healing the injured, because that's what rest is about. Hunger is incompleteness. A withered hand is not as it should be. Remember what rest is. It's the contentment, the satisfaction, the peace, the okayness that your soul longs for. Rest is the longing we have to be able to stand back and say, yes, everything is as it should be. And you can't do that when you're hungry. You can't do that when you've got a broken leg. Jesus doesn't interpret hunger or disfigurement as being the way things should be. And he takes this opportunity on the Sabbath to say, no. That is part of an old world that's going away. I'm going to show you what's to come. I'm going to show you what you can have a taste of now. Eat and be satisfied. I'm going to heal and restore. So this is where you see Jesus being very practical. He cares for the physical well-being of his people. He's very practical. He cares for the physical well-being of his people. He's merciful to those in physical need. I'm going to wear out this example, but it's so clear and powerful that it's just worth it. First Kings 19. Elijah has a bunch of needs. He's afraid, he's alone, he's depressed, he's suicidal. It's fascinating how the Lord deals with him. The Lord sends an angel, and at this point, I might be thinking this angel has come to declare something to him, much like the angel did with Mary, Joseph, Zechariah, the shepherds. But no, this angel prepares some freshly baked bread and water. He taps Elijah on the shoulder, wakes him up, says, look, eat, drink. He eats, he drinks, he falls back asleep. God sends the angel back. Maybe this time he's got a sermon. No, it's more food and water. Elijah eats again, he drinks again, and the text tells us that Elijah was strengthened by what he ate and drank, and he headed out on his way. No sermon. When suffering through adversity or difficult season of life, sometimes what we need most is a nap and a meal. Why? Well, think about what's happening on the Sabbath. Jesus is connecting things together. He's connecting, ministering to, and meeting the material needs of his people with a deep sense of existential rest. Everything is as it should be. Why do we need a nap and a meal? Not just for physical reasons, for spiritual reasons. They're rest-inducing in a literal sense, in a theological sense. In the feeding and healing stories, Jesus is implying this is what the Pharisees should have been about. If there was ever a time, an ideal time, to attend to the physical, the material needs of the people around you, it was on the Sabbath. Because this is what the Sabbath's about. Jesus is saying, this is what I've come to do. This is where all of history is leading. And you missed it, Pharisees. We are Jesus' agents of rest inducement. You are an agent of rest inducement. So, question, who in your circle of friends and acquaintances has some sort of physical or material need you can help meet? When you do that, and this is going to give meaning to those of you who are really active in this kind of ministry, when you do that, don't miss the deeper meaning of Jesus' ministry to the physical body. So providing a meal is not just satisfying hunger. It does that, but it's not just satisfying hunger. It is rest inducement. It's bringing something to completion. It's a taste of the ultimate rest to come, a signpost of the ultimate rest to come. You're not just filling bellies. There is something deeper that happens when you do this. Providing physical healing or aid to someone isn't just meeting a need. It's rest inducement. It's restoring things closer to the way they ought to be. So underneath attending to these practical, material, physical needs is moving people closer to meeting the existential need for rest, satisfaction, contentment, settledness, okayness. Jesus is showing us there is a connection between physical ministry and spiritual satisfaction. So when you make a meal for someone, it's not just food you're giving them, it's a taste of rest. When you take care of raking the leaves or shoveling the snow for someone, it's not just completing a chore, it's a taste of rest. It's not just fixing a faucet, it's a taste of rest. It's not just a chiropractic adjustment, it's a taste of rest. It's not just medicine for illness, it's a taste of rest. It's not just running an errand for a friend, it's a taste of rest. It's not just listening to the challenges and needs they have over a cup of coffee, it's a taste of rest. There's a better way to live in community with each other than nitpicking each other over secondary matters. How about meeting the tangible needs of those around you? And it's at this point where I wonder if Jesus would have turned to the Pharisees and said, listen, guys, let's do this. Let's redirect all this energy you have towards criticizing these guys, and let's redirect that energy and put that to productive use. There's a connection between ministry done in service to the practical needs of the person and giving them a taste of okayness, of rest. These are tastes, these are signposts, these are pointers to the ultimate rest. So who in your circle needs that? A man by the name of Don Ritchie passed away in 2012. He lived beside a cliff used for suicidal jumps, and he lived there for 50 years. Every time someone approached the cliff, he would go out there to make sure they didn't take their life. Over the years, he stopped at least 160 people from killing themselves. That's the official estimate, though his family said the number is closer to 400. He lived near something called the Gap, which is an ocean cliff near Sydney, Australia. Popular visitor destination which gained infamy as a suicide spot over the years. It's estimated that about 50 people end their lives there each year. As individuals walked up to the cliff, looking at the crashing waves below, wondering whether or not to jump, Don would get out of his house, he would walk up to them, he would approach them with a smile asking, "Why don't you come in and have a cup of tea?" Accepting his offer, these people would be invited into his home, where they would have a chat over tea. No counseling, no advising, no prying. Just one human being lending a listening ear to another. Some of these people had mental problems, some had medical illnesses, some were just people going through a rough patch. And for many, a listening ear over a cup of tea was apparently what they needed as they would change their minds about jumping after the chat and go back home. And he had over the years people return to his house to say, "Thank you. You saved my life." What was it? He's not a counselor. He's not a doc. He's a regular person. He approached him with a smile and said, why don't you come into my house and let's have a cup of tea together? There's a connection between ministry done in service of the practical needs of the person and giving them a taste of okayness, of rest. So how do we get this rest in full? Those things are signposts. They're tastes. They're pointers to the ultimate rest. But how do we get it in full? The elephant in the room in this story in Luke 6 remains. If Jesus is working and healing on the Sabbath, if there are behaviors that can be set aside on the Sabbath to attend to the practical needs of others, what does that say about the firmness of the laws pertaining to the Sabbath? Keep this in mind. Jesus is not arguing with the Pharisees by saying he isn't working on the Sabbath. Oh no, he affirms he is. And he's using David and his example as precedent, not excuse for, as precedent for him to be working. As though this command not to work on the Sabbath might be set aside if someone is in need of food or healing. Think about this. Jesus does not do that with other Old Testament laws. He never permits stealing under certain circumstances. He never permits adultery under certain circumstances. He never permits murder under certain circumstances. Those goalposts never move, but the Sabbath seems to move. Why can the command not to work on the Sabbath be set aside if it means meeting the practical needs of others, but the command not to commit adultery can't be set aside? Well, he answered the question. He said, I'm Lord of the Sabbath. He's the Sabbath's boss. He's the Sabbath's superior. He's the Sabbath's master. He's the one to whom the Sabbath points. Sabbath serves him. Sabbath leads to him. Jesus is the true Sabbath. He's the one who offers your soul the rest it craves. This is where the Pharisees messed it all up. They got obsessed with the vehicle used to transport them to Jesus and missed Jesus completely. It's like going on a road trip to a beautiful, beautiful setting, wherever that is. Think in your mind, where are you going to go? Where are you going to go? Where are you going to go? You get there, and all you can talk about is the trip or the car you were in. And you're missing completely what you're there for. They missed it. The laws pertaining to the Sabbath were meant to be a vehicle to deliver them to the feet of Jesus. And all they could do was pick at the trip. The vehicle itself. That's all they were looking at. Let me try to drive this home. Reason 2, point 2 says tastes of rest, signposts of rest, pointers to rest. Yes, I want to affirm the goodness of those things. But there's a reason I use the word tastes, signposts, pointers. Because those things themselves will ultimately not satisfy your soul. They weren't made to. Having a full belly, a raked yard, a functioning faucet, a limber back, a secure checking account can't ultimately provide you with the sort of rest Jesus offers as Lord of the Sabbath. Though all those things are pointers to and signposts of the ultimate rest Jesus offers. If we think all of those things can give us the rest that we long for, our souls crave, we end up like the sheep. All those things are down in that ditch. But we often miss it. Becket Cook's story is marvelously illustrative of what I'm talking about. I just want to read it. He writes this. He says, living in Los Angeles was the roller coaster ride of a lifetime. I had so many wonderful experiences and met so many amazing people. I attended movie premieres as a regular part of my social calendar. I saw friends, met celebrities, and sipped cocktails, not to mention enjoying amazing free food. I attended the Grammys and went to the Golden Globe after parties and to the Governor's Ball after the Oscars. I rode with Nia Vardalos in her limo from the Oscars to the legendary Vanity Fair Oscar party the year she was nominated for her role in My Big Fat Greek Wedding. I spent summers swimming in Drew Barrymore's pool in the Hollywood Hills. I was invited to a party Prince threw at his house in Benedict Canyon, where he performed for several hours on a stage set up in his enormous backyard, a small affair with remarkably few guests considering. I vacationed at Diane Keaton's desert getaway home. I acted opposite Nick Offerman from Parks and Recreation in a movie that premiered at the Sundance Film Festival. I attended a cocktail party at the home of Ariana Huffington of the Huffington Post, who greeted each and every person as they walked through the front door. As a set designer, I worked with many stars, including Meryl Streep, Katy Perry, Carrie Underwood, Christina Aguilera, Nicole Richie, Paris Hilton, Nicole Kidman, Kate Beckinsale, Jessica Chastain, Natalie Portman, and Oprah Winfrey. I once worked on a 3-month photo shoot divided into 2-week stints in Chicago, New York, Bangkok, Manila, Hong Kong, and Beijing, where we spent one night photographing an opulent dinner party on the Great Wall of China. All these extraordinary experiences were great fun and sustained me for a long time. I was having a ball. What more could I have asked out of life? If I had been given the option of planning my life and career when I was younger, I never would have dreamed of such opportunities and experiences that had become my daily life. And then he writes this: but lurking underneath all this, deep in the recesses of my mind and heart, was a longing that had yet to be satisfied. I read that and I said, really? That's impressive resume. Impressive resume. And he says, but lurking underneath all of this, deep in the recesses of my mind and heart, was a longing that had yet to be satisfied. He had every comfort, convenience, and amenity a human being can possibly dream up. And yet he says, and in his book, writes extensively about the fact that there was a longing all these experiences couldn't touch. As I was reading his story, the image that J.C. Ryle writes about came to mind. You know, when my kids were babies and fussy, you know, what do parents do? You attempt to try to soothe that, right? And how do we do that? You know, toys and dolls, rattles. Sometimes introducing new things, loud things, flashy things, right? You do that. The old thing has become old, now you got to bring in something new, right? Or change the scenery, go to the next room, take them outside, whatever it is, right? But as parents, what do we learn? Sometimes that works, but there are a couple occasions where none of that works. One of those is when they're famished. Because when they're hungry, only food will satisfy. And so like Beckett, we can fill our lives with toys and dolls and rattles, with the various comforts, conveniences, and amenities, but realize when you're famished, only Jesus is going to satisfy. Ryle put it this way. He said, for a person to be truly happy, you must have sources of gladness that are not dependent on anything in this world. Do you have that? Do you have that? Jesus says, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Let's pray. But Lord, so many of us are just like that sheep. We get pulled out of the ditch and we go running after the next thing, the next rattle, the next toy, the next amenity, the next experience. We plunge in after it, thinking to ourselves, this is it. This is the secret to a deep sense of peace. And we find ourselves in the same spot, stuck. And Lord, we can do that with church. We can do that with our religious activities. with the ways in which we go about those things. We get preoccupied with the vehicle that's meant to transport us to your Son. We become obsessed with the vehicle, and we miss your Son. So Lord, I pray that if anything, this story, this message would give us pause to do a deep inventory. Do we have the sort of rest Jesus invited us to? Or are we looking to anything, anyone but him to give us what only he can give? Show us if we've wandered, Lord. Show us if we've wandered. And bring us back to your Son. Yes, Lord. We know that he alone satisfies. We want to affirm that together. To the glory of Jesus' name, we ask and pray these things. Amen.